In the least shocking news of the year, Shohei Ohtani is a finalist for National League MVP. Dave Roberts is not a finalist for National League Manager of the Year. We'll dig into a little bit more into Shohei Ohtani's historic season and talk about the reasons why Roberts maybe isn't a finalist. All that live on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making us your first listen every weekday morning. And thanks to those of you who are with us live here on Monday evening. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And please make it easier on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snyder. My normal co-host is Vince Samperio, although it's just me tonight. Vince is with Mookie Betts and LeBron James at the Rams game tonight. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like most of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And no news on free agency. There was little rumblings. Dallas Keuchel, who was teammates for a little while, a couple months with Roki Sasaki in Japan this last year, said he had heard rumblings that it's a done deal that he's coming to the Dodgers. But obviously that doesn't mean anything. So we'll have more Sasaki news when there's actual news. We spent, a lot of the episode yesterday talking about Sasaki, so we won't dig into more of that today. But the big news in Major League Baseball was they have started releasing finalists for the awards. And a finalist is a misnomer. Finalist means that these are the people who are eligible to win, and now voters will vote from among those people. That's not what this is. The voting has already happened. It has already been tabulated, and Major League Baseball already knows who the winners of these awards are, and the finalists are the top three vote getters for each of these awards. The Dodgers only have one person up for an award, and that is Shohei Ohtani. Shockingly, one of the top three vote getters for National League MVP. Obviously, Ohtani will win the MVP award. It may be unanimous, depending on how blinded by partisanship some of the New York writers are, maybe some Arizona writers. Francisco Lindor and Ketel Marte are the other two in the top three. And so you could see maybe one of their writers giving a vote to one of them. But Ohtani is going to win at least 26 of the 30 votes. And he should. And it's an interesting situation. I just wanted to dig more into Ohtani's season because I know we talked about it all year. And some of the historic stuff that Ohtani did this year has been beaten to death a little bit, including by us. 50-50 obviously is amazing. I want to look at it specifically from a DH standpoint. Well, first, when Ohtani wins the MVP, he will become only the second player ever to win the MVP in both leagues. Frank Robinson right now is the only one ever to do it. He won it in 1961, I believe, with the Reds, and then 1966 with the Orioles. And he's the only person ever to win it in both leagues. The only two other people have really come close. Dick Allen won it with the White Sox and came in like fourth place one time with the Phillies. But the player who's come the closest is Shohei's teammate Mookie Betts, who won it with the Red Sox and has finished second twice with the Dodgers. Mookie is easily the closest anyone has ever come to joining Frank Robinson in the both league MVP club. Shohei Ohtani will become the second member of that club this year. It's not quite as exclusive as the 50-50 club where he's the only member, but this Frank Robinson thing it's been a big deal. I grew up knowing about this. It's a huge thing in baseball history that only Frank Robinson has won the MVP in both leagues. Ohtani doing that in his first year in the National League is going to be pretty impressive, especially when you factor in that he is a DH. He will become the first full-time DH ever to win the MVP award. Right now, the only person who has ever won the MVP award while playing most of the time as a DH is Shohei Ohtani, but he also pitched. Like all of his at bats came as a DH, basically. At least in one of the years he did hit while pitching later. But you know, he a big asterisk next to those two MVPs that Ohtani already won when we're talking about a DH, because he wouldn't have won them. One of them he for sure wouldn't have won if he hadn't also pitched. Last year, I think Ohtani might have had a pretty good case to win. He might have won the MVP even if he hadn't pitched. I don't know for sure. But this year, 2024, Ohtani will win the MVP having played only DH. He played nowhere else. And nobody's ever done that. Nobody's ever come close to that. Right now, it's like, I think the most is like somebody had 45% of their plate appearances as a DH. I think that was Don Baylor, if I remember right, in 1979. Was that the year he won it? I'm going all on memory here. Yeah, Don Baylor won it for the Angels in 1979. And yeah, as I've mentioned in the past on this show, another thing about Don Baylor is he also didn't deserve that MVP award. It was back then when people were wowed by home run and RBI numbers and didn't factor in the defense or the lack thereof in the case of Baylor. And that's why it's a little bit surprising that no DH ever has one, because, you know, the voters haven't always appreciated defense the way they do. And so it's a little bit surprising that no DH has ever won it and really even come super close. Don Baylor in 1979, he had 3.7 WAR. Freddie Lynn had 8.9 and finished fourth in the MVP voting. If we sort just the guys who got MVP votes by their WAR, Don Baylor is about 20th, 25th or so on this list in terms of WAR. But he won it because he led the league in runs scored and RBIs, played all 162 games, hit 36 homers. Oh, yeah, had a good season. Was a DH. That's the difference where Shohei Ohtani sets himself apart this year, is that he didn't just have a good year for a DH like Don Baylor did, like David Ortiz did, like Edgar Martinez did. Some of these great DHs, like Edgar Martinez, David Ortiz, legitimate Hall of Famers. Frank Thomas, Paul Molitor, those guys later in their careers as DHs had really good offensive seasons. Nobody has ever come close to what Ohtani has done. And I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm going to dig into some of those stats, some of the statistical, just mind-blowing stats from Shohei Ohtani, how much better he was this year than any DH has ever been before. So I'm going to come back and do that in a minute. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, I love sports. I love concerts. I love comedy shows. The thing all those things have in common is buying tickets, and that means the other thing they have in common is you can find the best price on Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You also have the option of turning on all-in pricing, which will show you the total prices up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And with the Game Time guarantee, you'll always get the lowest price, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. I've mentioned this before, that when I went down for Shohei Ohtani's second bobblehead game this year, and I got in line for the parking lot hours ahead of time, like a lot of people did, I didn't even have a parking pass yet when I got in line, because I knew I'd be sitting there in my car. I just pulled out the Game Time app from my car and boom, bought myself a parking pass. And by the time I went in, I had it. It was easy peasy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets to your favorite events with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Hey, I'm back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thank you to our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. You make that easier on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. Also, remember, for your second listen today, be sure to check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. And be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels over on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. If you're a fan of LA sports, Locked On Sports LA has you covered with shows about the Lakers and the Clippers and the Rams and the Chargers and all sorts of stuff. UCLA, USC, all the LA sports you could want. You can get all that over there. So, and go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Noah says, will Ohtani be the first MLB player to ever win 2 MVPs in each league? He's assuming Ohtani's going to win the MVP next year. Yes, he would be the first ever to do that. Frank Robinson only won the 2 MVP awards, only 2, one each with the Reds and the Orioles. So Ohtani will already this year become the first person ever to win 2 in one league and 1 in another next year. Yeah, he'll be the first to win 2 in each league going on. So I see some comments already about Dave Roberts. We will get to Dave Roberts in the next segment. Right now, I want to talk some more about Shohei Ohtani, his ridiculous season, because it's kind of like, obviously, it's not that Shohei Ohtani hasn't been talked about enough this year, but I also think there's always a backlash to things like this. And whenever somebody gets hyped, people will naturally run opposite to the hype. And so people have already tried to downgrade Ohtani. Well, Aaron Judge is better. Who cares? They're in different leagues. That's the awesome thing about them being in different leagues. Now they can both win their MVP award. If Judge had a slightly better season, okay, who cares? But he didn't play any defense in Francisco. Okay, I don't care. Shohei Ohtani was historically good this year. And I'm going to talk about some numbers to show that, because I'm going to show you, talk about him compared to other DHs. I'm looking at, you look just at WAR, and these are all through Baseball Reference. The Fangraphs WAR numbers would be slightly different, but same basic concept. Shohei Ohtani had 9.2 WAR this year. The next best DH season, Edgar Martinez had 7.0 in 1995. Ohtani a full 2.2 wins better than Edgar Martinez. David Ortiz's best season was 6.4 WAR. He had a 5.8 WAR. Like, you look at the top 15, it's all Edgar Martinez, David Ortiz, Travis Hafner, and Brent Rooker from this year. And then Shohei Ohtani. That is the list. As far as guys who played only DH, Ohtani's 9.2 WAR is more than twice as much as the next highest guy, which is Marcell Ozuna from this year, who had 4.3 WAR as solely a DH. All these other guys played a little bit of first base, a little bit of third base, a few different things. Shohei Ohtani, as we know, because he was recovering from surgery, from major arm surgery, and that's the part that just blows me away, that the reason Ohtani was just a DH this year wasn't because he could only play DH. It was because he was recovering from Tommy John surgery. To do what he did in that season was just remarkable. Looking at other things, most runs ever scored in a season by a DH. Shohei Ohtani this year with 134. The next highest, Edgar Martinez with 121 in 1995. Most hits by a DH. Shohei Ohtani, 197 this year. Most home runs by a DH. Shohei Ohtani, 54 this year. Next highest is David Ortiz, who had 54 homers in 2006, but only 47 of them as a DH. The other 7 came as a first baseman. RBIs, Ohtani has the 5th most ever by a DH in a season. Stolen bases. Ohtani's 59 stolen bases. It won't surprise you to learn that's the most ever by a DH. And all these numbers are based on players who played at least 90% of their games as a DH. 59 for Ohtani. The next highest, Gary Sheffield with 22 in 2007. Just running away from the competition there. Let's see. One thing that was interesting to me, DH, like the name is right there, designated hitter. The reason you exist is to hit. And yet only 4 times in baseball history has a DH led the league in OPS and or OPS plus. And Shohei Ohtani did both this year. Shohei Ohtani had the highest OPS plus ever for a DH this year at 190. His OPS of 1,036 was the seventh highest. All the other ones ahead of him, pretty much during the steroid era. And so his 190 OPS plus is just quite a bit higher. 185 for Edgar Martinez in 1995 was the second highest. It's weird to me. The only four guys have been the best hitter in the league as a DH, because all you're doing is hitting. You would think that here's a guy who can hit and not do anything else. He should be the DH. And yet it's not that easy. Total bases, 411 for Ohtani. The next highest for a DH is David Ortiz in 2005, 363. That means that Ohtani beat that by 48. That's like by 15% higher? Just remarkable. Base running runs, base running value, basically. There's two components. There's how often do you ground into double plays, which obviously a lot of DHs ground into a lot of double plays because DHs are often not playing the field because they're not extremely athletic. They're just good hitters. And so when they do hit the ball hard on the ground, they are going to, think of Albert Pujols for the second half of his career, hitting into a ton of double plays because he hit the ball hard. And if it was on the ground and run around first, there was no way he's going to leg anything out. And then the other component of the base running is just for all base running events, which is stolen bases, caught stealing, advancing on pass balls and wild pitches, taking extra bases, all those things. Combine those two, and Shohei Ohtani had 12 runs of value this year. The next highest ever for a DH was Paul Molitor with 5 in 1997. Ohtani wasn't just better than every other DH. Ohtani was amazingly better than every other DH in so many different categories. And just, the fact that there's a reason a DH has never won the MVP award. And that's because it should be really hard for a DH to win the MVP award because defense does matter. But the reason that Ohtani is going to win it, and probably unanimously, is because his offense was so much better that defense could not matter that much. And this is why we look at things like WAR. WAR is not perfect. The idea of WAR is perfect. The point of WAR, wins above replacement, is to identify the value that a player brings in all the different ways and put it together and give you a number. The way you can tell it's not perfect is that there are 3 different versions of WAR that never agree with each other. So clearly, and we've talked in the past about why that is, the different calculations for defense, different calculations for how they value, a lot of different things. And I don't think any one of them is right or wrong, but what they're trying to do is say, okay, how much value does it bring to a team? His defense, Francisco Lindor's defense. How much is Shohei Ohtani hurting a team by not being able to play defense? Add all that stuff up, and all the versions of WAR agree that Shohei Ohtani was significantly better than Francisco Lindor and Ketel Marte and everybody else in the league this year. And so that's why he's going to win the MVP award. It's not just the WAR award. And in a way, I'm glad that the different versions of WAR disagree with each other, because it would be kind of boring if it was just, well, who am I voting for MVP? Well, let's see who the best player was, because it should be. That's who you should vote for, is who was the best player. That's what valuable means, who played the best. And I'm glad that it's still a little bit subjective to determine who the best player was. National League in 2024, there is no question. It was Shohei Ohtani. He was the best player in the National League. He was one of the top 2 players in Major League Baseball this year, even as a DH. And that's pretty awesome. And he is in Dodger blue for a long time to come. So we will find out next week that he did win the MVP award. Right now, all we know technically is that he is a finalist for the MVP award, meaning he finished in the top 3 in the voting. Because yes, number 1 is in the top 3. It will go Ohtani and then Lindor and then Ketel Marte. I'm interested to see where Mookie Betts, even with his missed time, he still had a great season. He'll probably get some down ballot votes. Freddie Freeman will get some votes. Teoscar Hernandez will get some votes. I'm interested to see where all of those wind up, but we know who will be at the top. That will be Shohei Ohtani. Who won't be at the top of the manager of the year voting is Dave Roberts. He's not even one of the top three. We're going to come back in a minute and dig into that a little bit and talk about whether he got robbed and whether it matters. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today. And I'm looking at the odds. We have Thursday Night Football coming up this week, and it's the Commanders against the Eagles. The Eagles are -174 favorites. That's a pretty strong favorite. So if you feel confident that the Eagles are better than the Commanders, going to win that game, put your $5 bet on the Eagles to win that. And if they do win, you will get $150 in bonus bets. And then you can use that to say, oh, look at the World Series odds for 2025. You want to play the long game? Dodgers are right now +400. Put your $150 on a +400, and boom, when the Dodgers win the World Series next year, suddenly you turn your $150 into what's that, $600? Or if you want to get really crazy, the Chicago White Sox are currently +50,000 to win the World Series next year. Put your $150 in bonus bets on the White Sox, and if they somehow win the World Series, you just turned that into a lot of money. I can't do that math, but it's $75,000. I did that math. So whatever it is, all you got to do is place a $5 bet and win it, and you will get $150 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks for being here with me live. If you're not an everydayer, please become one. If you're not subscribed, it would mean a lot to us if you would subscribe right now. If you're in here watching me on YouTube right now and you're not subscribed, just hit the little subscribe button. It would be awesome. We love, the off season. We're going to have content every weekday still, all off season long. The content is different, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We love talking Dodgers. There's free agency, there's awards, there's so much more. The Dodgers are going to have an exciting off season, and so is Locked On Dodgers. So be sure to subscribe so you can join us with that. Remember to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers, and be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles over on YouTube. Just going to try to scroll through the chat a little bit. Let's see. Somebody, Elisheva says she's all maxed out on Shohei Ohtani. Sorry. Yeah, you know what? There's plenty of Dodgers to talk about, and we do talk about a lot of them, but Ohtani is in the news right now. And yeah, I'm looking forward to when we do get some free agency news and all of those things. But Ohtani being a finalist for the MVP is definitely newsworthy and worth revisiting his historic season. But as I mentioned, Dave Roberts is not one of the top 3 vote getters for National League Manager of the Year. All 3 guys who are on there are deserving. Carlos Mendoza of the Mets, Mike Shildt of the Padres, and what's his name? Pat Murphy of the Brewers. And I think it kind of underscores what the Manager of the Year award is, which is it's basically who exceeded expectations. And that's something, when you look at it that way, Dave Roberts is going to have a really hard time, because expectations for the Dodgers all the time are to be the best team in baseball. And so the Dodgers were the best team in baseball. By definition, to some people, all Dave Roberts did was meet expectations. Now, when you look at the details of how it happened, all of the injuries, all of those things that went on with the Dodgers this year, for the Dodgers to have the best record in baseball was ridiculous. And it was Dave Roberts' finest year as a manager, and that includes 2016 when he won Manager of the Year award. But because the Dodgers have these expectations every year, it's going to be really hard for Dave Roberts to ever win the Manager of the Year award because all he can do is meet those expectations. And it's also worth noting all of these awards, MVP, Manager of the Year, all those things, the voting happens at the end of the regular season before the postseason has started. And so there is no World Series bump for Dave Roberts. There's no world, playoff loss penalty for the other three managers. All three of their teams lost in the playoffs. Carlos Mendoza got the farthest of the three, but none of that matters because the voting was already in before the postseason started. And I do think if you factored in the postseason, Dave Roberts probably would have won it this year because everybody agrees that he had a very good job, had a very good postseason managing the Dodgers. But I kind of like looking at the Manager of the Year winners because one thing that's common, like almost by definition, when your team exceeds expectations, a lot of times that's because it was a fluke. And so a lot of times a guy who wins Manager of the Year because his team exceeded expectations, then the next year the team comes back to earth and the manager, he's not so great anymore. That's why it's really hard to win back-to-back. Kevin Cash is the only guy in the last long time to win back-to-back Manager of the Year awards. I'm just scrolling through. I think Bobby Cox in 2004 and 2005 was the last one before Kevin Cash in 2020 and 2021. It's hard to win back-to-back Manager of the Year awards. And it's also even hard to just keep your job after winning Manager of the Year. You look at this. Skip Schumacher was last year's Manager of the Year with the Marlins. He is now out of a job. He lasted one season after winning Manager of the Year. Buck Showalter won it in 2022 with the Mets. Out of a job. Gabe Kapler won it in 2021 with the Giants. Out of a job. Don Mattingly won it in 2020 with the Marlins. Out of a job. All the last four National League Manager of the Year winners have been fired within 2 years of winning the award. Mike Schilt won it in 2019. Oh, make that the last five because I think, did Schilt get fired after 2021? I think he did. So he won it in 2019, got fired after 2021. So Brian Snitker won it in 2018. So yeah, the last five National League Managers of the Year have been fired within 2 years of winning the award. That's almost all you need to know about this award. Torey Lovullo, then you have a good stretch. 2018, Brian Snitker, 2017, Torey Lovullo, 2016, Dave Roberts. Three straight and guys who are still managing their teams and still doing well. None of them won Manager of the Year award again because once you've won it once, now the expectations are there. And so you can't exceed expectations anymore. That's the thing. So the main thing, and I guess the other thing, I'm starting sentences and not finishing them. I promise to finish at least enough of them to make a cogent point at some point. I've said before, I believe that managers get too much credit for wins and too much blame for losses. And by definition, that means that I don't care about the Manager of the Year award. I believe Dave Roberts was the best manager in baseball this year. I don't care that he's not going to win the award because it doesn't measure who was the best manager. What it measures, the three finalists they have are probably the right ones for what the award actually traditionally measures. I hope Carlos Mendoza wins it. I think Mike Schilt shouldn't win it because I think the Padres there were a lot of people picking the Padres to win the division. The Padres have a ton of talent. I hope Mike Schilt doesn't win it just because he didn't do as good a job. Carlos Mendoza, had the high payroll, but a very disappointing team that he took over. I like Carlos Mendoza as a manager. I like Pat Murphy as a manager too. And the Brewers did trade their ace in the offseason. And then, so either of those guys, I'd be happy for him. But I'm not going to stress too much about Dave Roberts not being one of the top three. I assume he's in the top five. I assume he got at least enough love for that. But again, the award doesn't matter at all. Some awards matter. I don't know if managers even ever have Manager of the Year clauses in their contracts. At least with MVP or Cy Young, you can get mad that you're taking money out of that guy's pocket by voting wrong. Managers, it doesn't even matter for that, I don't think. It's just an award that doesn't really mean anything. So, we'll see who which one of those guys is likely to get fired in the next couple of years because his fluky team, and I guess, who knows what's going to happen. But manager of the year doesn't matter. That is my main thesis of this segment. I'm just going to look through the chat, see if there's anything else. Noah says Roberts was definitely manager of the postseason. He exceeded all expectations. Keeping Treinen in the game after the mound visit in the World Series Game 5 proves it. I agree, Noah, although I don't know that he had any choice other than to leave Treinen in, because who else was he going to bring in? So, I think Dave Roberts deserves a lot of credit. I don't know he's maybe getting too much credit for that move, because I don't know that he had any other options. But the way he handled it, walked out there and let Treinen know that he believed in him, that's the part that I think he deserves credit for. Looking out the rest of the chat, Richard Flores says, so manager of the year is bad for your employment. Correlation and causation are not the same thing. But yeah, the things that lead to becoming manager of the year often also lead to having disappointing seasons after. So I'll put it that way. Richard also says, I think Dave is okay with the World Series ring rather than manager of the year award. Absolutely. I think Dave Roberts would love to finish 5th in the manager of the year award voting and win the World Series every single year, and I would be on board with that. So who cares? I guess that's going to do it for me for today. Vince and I should be back together tomorrow, and we'll have more to talk about. Who knows? Hopefully some free agent news coming up soon. We'll dig into some of the other possibilities. Max Fried is a name that keeps getting tossed around that we've talked about Fried, but haven't gotten deep on Max Fried. So probably talk about him soon and a lot more. So thank you all for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Thanks for being here live with me. A good crowd here in the chat for a Monday night in the off season. I really appreciate that. Thanks for being here. Remember to go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Also be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. Also, again, please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. It would mean the world to me. More subscribers. Please stick with us in the off season. Help us, keep providing awesome content for you all off season, and then we can head into the regular season next year super strong and loving our Dodgers together. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSince91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. Both of our DMs are open there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK, 5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.